Welcome to the 5-7 podcast. I'm your host, Pri, and today the podcast is going to be on the Illinois Governor, J.W. Pritzker, legalizes marijuana. This article is from time.com, and I also have some information from the denverpost.com. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said Saturday he's reached an agreement with key lawmakers on a plan to legalize recreational marijuana in the state starting next year. The legislation would allow adults 21 and older to legally buy cannabis for recreational use from licensed dispensaries. Illinois residents could possess up to about an ounce, 30 grams of marijuana, while non-residents could possess about an ounce, 15 grams. The measure also would automatically expunge some marijuana convictions. If it passes, Illinois would join 10 other states, including neighboring Michigan, in legalizing recreational marijuana. While the Illinois law would take effect January 1st, the first licenses for Illinois growers, processors, and dispensaries wouldn't be issued until May and July 2020, the governor's office said. Pritzker was joined by fellow Democrat lawmakers in Chicago to announce the deal, which comes after years of discussion among state legislators. They said the measure will be introduced Monday, kicking off debate at the legislature, where Democrats hold a majority in both chambers. The proposal starts righting some historic wrongs against minority communities that have suffered from discriminatory drug policies and enforcement, the new governor said. Now, I'm not entirely sure what discriminatory drug policies means, because either you follow the law and don't do drugs, or you do. And I'm not really sure what that means. Anyways, I'll move on. The bill advances equity by providing resources and second chances to people and communities that have been harmed by policies such as failed war on drugs, said Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, who is black. The measure includes a $20 million low-interest loan program to help defray the cost of starting a licensed cannabis business for social equity applicants. Those applicants would include people who have lived in a disproportionately impacted area or communities with high rates of poverty and high rates of arrest and incarceration for marijuana offenses, or been arrested or convicted of offenses eligible for expungement. Now, I don't know why they would want to have a loan program, a 20-minute low-interest loan program for a demographic of people that have been, quote unquote, disproportionately impacted by drugs. Now that just doesn't make sense to me. Why you would want to give these people an opportunity to start a business that dispenses marijuana to an area of people who will have high marijuana use, because they have been I don't know, that just sounds like a really bad idea. I'm not saying that only certain people can grow and sell marijuana once this becomes legal. What I am saying is that you shouldn't just grab a handful and say, hey, you guys are the ones that are going to be able to get $20 million to start your marijuana business, even though you've historically been impacted by drugs. I'll move on. Critics of legislation, including law enforcement and the Illinois NAACP, have said it would lead to more addiction and mental health issues and would harm rather than help black communities. I agree. The consequences of this bill are far-reaching and will have devastating impacts on citizens, communities, and youth, said Kevin Semay, founder and president of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Illinois lawmakers must take a smart, common-sense approach and not welcome in another addiction-for-profit industry into the state. Medical cannabis is already legal in Illinois, Pritzker campaigned on the issue of legalizing recreational marijuana and is counting on $170 million from licensing fees in his proposed state budget for the fiscal year that starts July 1. He said future revenue from legal marijuana will help Illinois address some of its deep financial problems. The governor's office said 35% of revenue from legal cannabis would go to the state's general operating fund, while an additional 25% would go into a new Restoring Our Communities fund. That money would be distributed as grants in communities that have suffered the most because of discriminatory drug policies. Illinois would use 10% of revenue to pay a backlog of unpaid bills. The rest of the money would support mental health and substance abuse treatment, law enforcement grants, and public education and awareness. Now, there's a couple things here that need to be taken into consideration. For number one, I'm a proponent for legalizing marijuana, and I'll tell you why. There are, there's people out there that could utilize marijuana for its healing properties. There's some people that are in chronic pain, and I wouldn't just say medicinal marijuana, but marijuana in general would help these people with their pain. And I don't think that that's an issue. I think that's a better solution than getting people hopped up on opioids and oxycodone, for example. I did a podcast on that last week. I recommend that you listen to it if you haven't, because of the effects that opioids have on people. Is an incredible downside to using them. Yes, they do help with pain, but there is an extremely high risk of addiction to them. Now, marijuana is different. I wouldn't say that there's that you can't get. I don't want to say addicted, because there has been some people that get addicted to it. But I will say you're better off using it than opiates. People have been using CBD oil as well. And what's really, really cool is that a lot of companies are taking the psychoactive ingredient THC out of the CBD oil so that you're not experiencing any of those psychoactive effects. And I think that's really big. And obviously, if you're having pain issues, you can use the CBD. It's also been known to help with anxiety and depression. So yeah, there are a lot of there's a lot of utility to using it, and I'm a proponent for it. Now, there are people who abuse these things, and that needs to be taken into consideration. And maybe there needs to be some other programs set up to help mitigate that. Alcohol is another thing. People, obviously prohibition came around. It was the birth of organized crime, and it was a huge problem. And nowadays, there are still a lot of people who have issues with alcohol. A lot of a lot of guys or women, it's a natural depressant, and they have issues with it. People get addicted to that as well. But when people are addicted to alcohol, some people tend to be more violent when they're on alcohol. People typically are not violent when they're high on marijuana. So there's a plus that you could say, for instance, right there. So yeah, that's just a small instance, but it's something that I wanted to bring up between the differences between marijuana and alcohol, which is legal now. One thing that does need to be taken into consideration is driving under marijuana. I don't think that people should be driving under marijuana, and I wonder if there's a way to test your say your inebriation under marijuana. If there's a way to do a kind of like a breathalyzer, whether if you're high or too high to drive. Maybe if you shouldn't just drive at all if you're on marijuana. I don't know. But the Denver Post posted a study that they did in Denver that because it's marijuana has been legal for 5 years there now, and the impact that marijuana has had on the state. And here are some quick statistics from it. Education. Colorado has not experienced an increase in marijuana use among young people, although it was the single most common reason for school expulsions in the 2016-17 school year, the first year it was broken out as its own category. Marijuana also has not impacted graduation rates or dropout rates in Colorado. Graduation rates have increased while dropout rates have decreased since 2012. Well, that's more reassuring that kids aren't just dropping out of school and smoking weed all day. Driving. The number of drivers in fatal crashes who tested above the legal limit of THC, marijuana's active ingredient, decreased to 35 in 2017, down from 52 in 2016. The number of citations for marijuana only impaired stayed steady between 2014 to 2017 at around 7% of all DUI arrests. That's roughly 350 citations out of nearly 5,000 DUI arrests each year, the report said. Arrests. Total marijuana arrests dropped by half during a 5-year period, decreasing to 6,153 in 2017 from 12,709 in 2012. Marijuana possession arrests. The majority of all marijuana-related arrests were cut by more than half during the same period, dropping to 5,154 from 11,361. Crime. Pot grown illegally on public lands, an indicator for the size of the black market, also is on the rise, with 80,926 plants seized in 2017, a 73% increase in 5 years. Sounds like people are looking to get in on the money train. Organized crime cases almost tripled in 5 years, increasing to 119 in 2017 from 31 in 2012. Rates of hospitalization with possible marijuana exposures increased steadily from 2000 through 2015. The number of adults who use marijuana increased between 2014 and 2017, with men getting high more often than women and young adults ages 18 to 25, the most frequent users. Yeah, and that's not a big shocker that the biggest group of people using it are ages 18 to 25. Obviously kids are young and they want to try it out, and obviously I was young once, and people wanted to try stuff, and I did too. And I don't see anything wrong with it. But obviously there's some things to take into consideration. It's very reassuring to hear that kids aren't that the graduation rate is going up, and that's good news. So, in closing, I want to say that I'm for legalization of marijuana. I'm not sure how this is going to work out in Illinois, because this was done in Denver, and Denver has a much different, I would say, social atmosphere than I would say Chicago does, because Chicago plays a huge role in a lot of things that happen in the United States. Oh, not in the United States, in Illinois. I'm sorry. For example, because there's such a large amount of people there, and because there's such a large amount of people there, and they have so many taxpayers there, and the outlining area of Chicago, of the northern Chicago, the suburbs, and even going into Indiana. The Chicagoland area is very big, and there's a lot of people that reside there. And I'm curious how this is going to happen, because there's there's some big urban neighborhoods there, and they're saying that these areas are going to get 20 million loan incentives and to increase to sell marijuana, and obviously marijuana use is just going to increase. And I wonder how that's gonna impact the area. So it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, we have some the same or better statistics that Denver is seeing after legalizing it. Hopefully this will help. This will help. People being thrown in jail for marijuana misdemeanors. It'll clear up the jails a little bit. Get more taxpayers out working. I'm being optimistic here, and we'll see how it pans out. But and for the other people that actually, the people, majority of people that use it correctly, to help them with their daily lives in a way, like I said, with anxiety or depression or pain. This is something that's really, really good for them, and I hope that it helps. So, guys, remember to keep an eye out for each other. It's not you against the world. We're all in it together. We need to keep an eye on what's going on out there. Question what our lawmakers are doing, and look into what they're doing, because it's important that we all know, and it's important that we all stay aware, so that when they start, releasing laws or trying to put bills through through Congress, through the House of Representatives or the Senate, that it's something that we want, and it's something that we could utilize. The 2020 presidential election is going to be coming up. It's important to read up on who is running, why they're running, who they are, and make informed decisions. Whether you go left or right, it doesn't really matter, or right down the middle. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you're informed and you make the right decision. So, guys, take it easy, guys, and got some things coming down the pipe. I got some interviews coming up. I'm going to be doing a book review on the Celestine prophecy coming up. It's pretty interesting. I'll get into that, obviously, when I do the book review. And be sure to mitigate your risk and take care of yourselves. All right, guys, this is Pri, out.